r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. Reddit. Have you ever had an oh shit, I'm gonna die moment? Or a moment where you accepted death? What was it? A few years ago my wife and her sisters went to the county fair. I had no interest in going. And my only request was that they bring me back a turkey leg. I was mostly joking. But they delivered. I began devouring it on sight and several minutes in it became very clear that a piece was lodged in my throat. For some reason. In that moment. In a room with 4 other adult human beings fully capable of administering the Heimlich maneuver. I opted to back out of the room and try to handle things on my own. After several unsuccessful coughs I started to feel on the brink of passing out. Instead of seeking help, I just kind of mentally shrugged and was like, welp, I guess this is how I go. A few coughs later and I was out of the woods with them none the wiser. I didn't tell my wife or her sisters the story until a few days later. And to this day at family functions one of them will randomly be like, hey, remember that time you choked on a turkey leg and went away to quietly die? I just loudly died laughing at that last line. It's common for people who are choking to leave the room as you did. For some reason the fear of looking like an idiot often wins out over the I'm ducking choking, help me response. This kills people. Another example. I was in a rollover car accident about 10 years ago. It wasn't my first accident, or even my first rollover. But this one was different. I was in the passenger seat of a Ford Explorer Sport doing about 70 miles per hour when it happened. I remember every second. Every sound of breaking glass and screeching metal. Being blinded by the dirt in the air and smelling it as it filled my nostrils. After the second flip, my seatbelt released and I shifted toward the passenger side window. I was stuck with my back against the roof. Legs on the seat and ass hanging out the space where the window used to be. I was trying to pull myself back into the truck so that it wouldn't roll on me next time around and crush me. The force was too much. And I felt myself slipping. Once I knew I was beaten, I just sort of let it all go. And thought it was over for me. I was ejected ass first through the passenger side window of a Ford Explorer. Interesting note, I'm 6 feet 6 inches and about 225 lbs. Instead of getting crushed, I was flying through the air. Suddenly all the terrible noises were gone. The air was clean and clear. And I was at peace. I knew it was over for me. And I accepted that. Next thing I know, I'm waking up on the side of the road. 40 yards from an almost unrecognizable hunk of smoking metal. With no idea where I am or how I got there. To top it off, I could hear my brother, the driver, screaming. But couldn't figure out why. I tried to get up to help him. And discovered that my right collarbone and left femur were broken. I had a lot more injuries. But those were the ones that forced me to just lie back down and wait for help to arrive. You really need to get a tattoo below any of the scars from that in textbook-like font. Figure 1. Ejected ass first. I do have some cool scars on my leg. I used to set off metal detectors due to the 47cm steel rod and the couple screws in that femur. So I'd have to show the scars and explain this is where the top screw is. This is where the bottom screw is. This is where they cut me open after dislocating my hip to insert the rod. And this big jagged one is where the bone was sticking out the side of my leg. Throwaway to stay anonymous. People seem to think anything is okay as long as you say it's a prank afterward. One thing that sticks out in my head is a video going around the internet of a clown smashing a dummy's head in with fake blood splatter. And then chasing people with a weapon. Well, I was a victim to a similar prank. They're definitely not harmless. It was the night before Halloween and a couple friends and I had just gotten done working at a local haunted house. Being so close to Halloween, the haunt ran pretty late and we weren't out of costume and ready to leave until about 1 AM. So I guess technically early Halloween morning. The 3 of us got in my car. But as I started to drive off, I noticed my tire was flat. I drove very slowly to a nearby gas station and filled it up, hoping it would last until I got home. It didn't. So I stopped at another gas station. I had a spare tire, but no jack or lug wrench. So I called my parents to come help. They came and as I was watching my stepdad change my tire, a man walked past but stopped just on the other side of my car from where we were. I thought this was odd. But he had his phone up, so I figured he just couldn't multitask well enough to walk and text. I turned my head and saw another man walking up. He was wearing all black and had a motorcycle helmet on. He was carrying an axe. My parents were understandably upset and began yelling at the man that it wasn't funny and to leave. So both the men ran away. I had never been more scared. And I don't think I ever will be again. Bro. That is pretty scary. Not really a good prank to pull. Thanks for sharing. I never understood these pranks. Haha. Look at people fleeing in fear for their lives. IT's funny, right? I don't like pranks in general. I especially hate that one on YouTube where the guy pretends to be blind and screw around with a perfectly nice kid. He even makes the kid look bad in front of two guys by acting like the kid made fun of him for having a disability. When the kid complained about this later, the douchebag said, "But millions of people on the internet will love you." That's not your decision to make, douchebag. I had hemorrhoids for the first time a few weeks ago. Thought I had cancer. That feeling of not knowing if it's a muscle tear or some form of cancer is indeed horrifying. As common a problem as this is, no one talks about it openly, so it's shocking when it happens and you just don't know what is happening. I had my parachute collapse at about 150 feet off the ground due to another person's ignorance. At that height, the reserve won't have time to inflate if deployed. I remember saying duck to myself as I fell. There wasn't any fear. Just a mind-numbing thought to "this is going to hurt." I walked away with a shitload of bruises and it indeed hurt. Thank you for deep sandy drop zones. How did you land? As in, what part of your body? Old paratrooper saying. Feet and knees together. I pretty much landed on my feet and left side. At least that would explain why that side hurt more. The saving grace was a deep pile of sand. My buddies said it sprayed everywhere when I hit. Though I was dead. I had some very bad years in high school. I was struggling with depression and a chaotic home life due to the foster children my parents had taken in. I knew where my mom had morphine for her pain, and I was planning to go that night. I started to write a letter. I honestly felt great. Like everything was going to finally end. The only thing that stopped me was seeing my mother cry after one of the kids threw a high chair at her head and smeared his shit on the wall. I was the oldest. I was the only one who could help her. I couldn't make her go through my death too. So I stuck it out. When I finally moved out at 18, I started getting real help in the form of medication and therapy. You are one amazing person to stick it out just for your mother. That's rough. I'm sorry. Good to hear you got help. Best of luck to you for the future. Throwaway because duck people knowing my username. 2 years ago I was partying in Ibiza, a small clubbing island off the coast of Spain. It was about 7 AM. I had taken a mixture of cocaine, MDMA and plenty of alcohol. I was hanging around on the deck of my friend's apartment she was living at. It was 4 stories up and the railing on the deck was pretty low. In my inebriated stupor I managed to trip over the side of it. 4 stories above concrete. This isn't going to end well was the words that went through my mind as I fell. I was falling head first. I had pretty much accepted that I wasn't going to survive. However, on the 2nd story there was a clothesline. It was a couple of wires. Not very sturdy. I tried grabbing it but fell straight through. However, it managed to turn my body around so I landed on my feet. A broken heel. A shattered ankle. Dislocated hip and a fractured spine later. Here I am. The actual moment wasn't very scary. I just sort of accepted it. I remember waking up in hospital thinking, holy duck. I'm alive. The high from that didn't last long as I didn't have insurance. And I was alone in a non-English speaking country. It was 2 months before I could try to walk again. Today I can't run and dance terribly. That's crazy. The moment you mentioned clothesline, I thought you were going to say it sprung you back up. Like in the cartoons. That's crazy. Glad to hear you're okay and got help. Best of luck. I was 8 and string cheese was actually the best thing in the world to me. We were hiking up in Washington state and I dropped my string cheese off the side of the mountain and dove down to get it. In my head I basically said, this is it, I am an idiot, but my uncle and my aunt pulled me up before I plunged to my death. They also had another string cheese on them, so I guess it was a win-win. I respect your 8-year-old self's commitment to string cheese. I love string cheese. Several times on the toilet. Yup. Same. Just the other day. Username relevant. Sudden anaphylaxis one night at home with my husband. He drove me to the hospital with one fist down my throat to keep my airway open. I had to be revived at the ER. Spent 4 days in the hospital. Whoa. Fist down your throat? That's hardcore. You know it. Girl I was messing around with found out that I had slept with another girl, wasn't dating or looking to date either. Had been clear about that. Girl 1 shoved me into a river. I can't swim, pretty deep. Hit the bottom. Thought. This is the end. Still no idea how I made it to the surface. Chicks. Man. Drowning seems like one of the most suckish ways to die. Emo. Glad you made it out. Haha. Second time that I've almost drowned. It would be horrible. Judging from the almost experience I had. Every time I lean back too far on a chair. Man. Don't remind me. Those were my daredevil days. Too many close encounters with death leaning back in chairs. I was young and dumb. But occasionally I get the urge and have to stop myself before things get out of hand. Back in 2006. My then girlfriend was driving me home after a poker game at a buddy's place. Was about 2:30 AM. And we were driving on a rural road. All of a sudden. Headlights come round the corner on our side of the road. Shit. Whilst it was only maybe 5 seconds from spotting the car until the impact. Time seemed to almost stand still. We managed to have a pretty long conversation on whether or not he was on the wrong side. And how best to deal with this. Thankfully. I never had a chance to offer an opinion. As I almost certainly would have picked wrong. Pull left. And I'm taking a row of concrete bollards to the face. So probably dead. Pull right and the other car, which was drunkenly being corrected, would probably score a direct hit on the passenger side. So probably dead. By a pleasing twist of fate. My girlfriend had been watching a documentary on Formula 1 drivers a couple of days before. While waiting for another show to start. Apparently, one of the drivers said that when he knows he will crash, he aims for the least worst spot and goes for it. So that's what she did. Aimed for a big spongy bush. And ended up hitting the driver's side of the other car. Flipping him and bringing us to a flat halt. Big crunches. Flash of white light, their bag. And stopped in an instant. Just as we agreed that we were all good. The bonnet ignited. Oh shit, now we are probably dead. Not sure if things were going to go all Hollywood. With some explosions and all. We'd go to run for it. Except the impact has crushed her door. So she can't get out. Double shit. So we both have to scramble out my side and away from the burning car. As I get away. Calm down and check my girlfriend is okay. My leg starts to ache. As the initial shot of adrenaline wears off. Turns out I had broken my leg in the impact. At the hospital. My girlfriend had about 8 student doctors through looking at her. They reckon she should have fractured her pelvis. And broken at least one femur in the impact. She only had cuts and bruises. TLDR. Big car crash. Several bits of luck equals not being dead. I used to live in a van. One weekend during the height of the polar vortex I visited some people in Minnesota. And on the drive back down sometime post midnight my car broke down and I spent the night parked at a lone empty gas station hundreds of miles from anybody I knew. While I seriously considered that I might freeze to death. I wasn't sure if the temperature was low enough to kill me. I hoped that I would live. But I chose not to take any death preventing action, calling 911 or whatever, until the morning. And if I died, I died. But I didn't. So that's cool. So I'm really tall. Almost 7 feet. At some point while I was still growing I realized I wasn't gonna be able to fit on roller coasters anymore. So I went to Magic Mountain in LA one last time. I get on Goliath in the front car. There's no loops on this ride. So there's no over the shoulder strap. Just the bar that goes across your lap. As I sit down I realize I can only fit one knee inside the bar and it only locks one click. I'm frantically trying to readjust and thinking duck duck duck, I should really say something, this is going to suck, and suddenly my one leg that was locked in slips out from under the bar, so now I'm not strapped in at all as the ride immediately starts and we're going up the hill and I'm ducked. I look at my sister next to me with what must have been the most terrified face, and she realizes what's wrong and starts screaming. I held onto the bar with my hands the entire ride with everything I had. If I had let go at any point I would have been a goner, no doubt. It felt like I was floating above my seat the entire time, and in the picture the ride camera took of me my face is entirely out of the frame and it looks like I'm a foot above my seat. We got off the ride and I just immediately left the park without saying a word until we were like 30 minutes away in the car. And that was the last time I went on a roller coaster. Holy shit. I rarely get to go on roller coasters. But I have this recurring dream where I'm on a roller coaster and the bar gets loose and I'm hanging on with one arm, just dangling as the ride is going. I can't imagine how that must have actually felt. Goliath is scary as shit. My mom rode on it before they had the safety bars. Scary as shit. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.